A routine inspection. An ordinary night. The roar of jet engines had long ceased, replaced by the hollow echoes of an empty hangar. James Mercer, aircraft maintenance engineer with 23 years of experience, had seen everything. Or so he thought. That night in October would change everything he believed about aviation, machinery, and the barriers between our world and something far more sinister. Before we go deeper, make sure to subscribe now. This channel exposes aviation mysteries and forbidden reports the industry tries to hide. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next investigation into the darkest corners of aeronautical nightmares. It was just past midnight at Hartsfield International Airport. The sprawling maintenance hangar housed 6 commercial aircraft undergoing routine checks before their morning departures. Most mechanics had gone home, leaving a skeleton crew to handle overnight inspections. Mercer had volunteered to stay late. Flight 2177, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, needed a thorough engine examination after pilots reported unusual vibrations during their descent into Atlanta. "I've handled hundreds of engine inspections," Mercer later told investigators, his voice still trembling months after the incident. Turbines, compressor blades, fuel systems, they're complex but ultimately predictable. Machines follow rules. They don't whisper. The Boeing 787 uses twin Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 turbofan engines, each containing thousands of precisely engineered components. Mercer began his inspection with standard protocols: visual examination of the fan blades, borescope inspection of the internal components, and careful documentation of any irregularities. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until he reached the high-pressure compressor section. "I was inserting the borescope through the inspection port," Mercer recounted, "when I heard it. At first, I thought it was feedback from my headset, or maybe air still trapped in the system. But it wasn't feedback. It wasn't trapped air." According to Mercer's official statement, later classified by the Federal Aviation Administration, it was a sound no engine should ever produce. A sound like whispering. Mercer initially dismissed it, attributing the noise to his exhaustion after a 14-hour shift. He continued the inspection, moving the flexible borescope camera deeper into the compressor assembly, examining each blade for microscopic cracks or signs of metal fatigue. The whispering grew louder. "It was so faint at first that I questioned my own sanity," Mercer explained. "But then it became coherent, like multiple voices speaking simultaneously, just below the threshold of understanding." He removed the borescope, stepped back from the massive engine, and took a moment to collect himself. The maintenance hangar was quiet, except for the occasional clink of tools and the distant hum of the airport beyond its walls. The voices had stopped. Perhaps it had been his imagination after all. Then he noticed something odd about the engine's exterior. A fine layer of what appeared to be condensation had formed on the titanium cowling, unusual in the climate-controlled environment of the hangar. When Mercer wiped it with his gloved hand, the moisture felt strangely warm, not cool like condensation should be, warm like breath on glass. Against his better judgment, Mercer reinserted the borescope and continued the inspection. His job demanded thoroughness, regardless of his growing unease. As the camera snaked its way toward the combustion chamber, the whispering returned. Louder now, more insistent. Then it changed. It wasn't whispering anymore, Mercer said, his voice cracking during his interview. It was screaming, not in pain, but in hunger. The screams emanated from the deepest recesses of the engine, reverberating through the borescope's audio pickup with such intensity that Mercer yanked out his earpiece. Yet even without the equipment, he could still hear them, faint but unmistakable, coming directly from the engine itself. Other mechanics in the hangar heard nothing. When Connor Phillips, a junior technician working on an adjacent aircraft, saw Mercer's distress, he approached to help. James was pale, sweating, Phillips later reported. He kept insisting there were voices coming from inside the engine, but when I put on the headset and checked the borescope feed, I heard nothing unusual. What happened next defies conventional explanation. Mercer, determined to prove he wasn't hallucinating, made a critical decision. He reached for the engine start sequence simulator, a diagnostic tool used to test engine responses without actually igniting the turbine. According to protocol, such tests require authorization and safety clearance, especially with the cowling open for inspection. Mercer bypassed these protocols. As the simulator sent electrical signals to the engine's control systems, the whispers erupted into a cacophony of screams so loud that Mercer fell backward, dropping the diagnostic equipment. Phillips and two other mechanics rushed over, certain that something catastrophic had happened, but the engine remained silent to everyone except Mercer. "They're in there," he kept repeating, pointing at the perfectly still turbine. "They're in the blades. Don't you hear them?" When Phillips helped Mercer to his feet, they both noticed something impossible. The borescope's digital display, which had fallen to the floor, was still active, and what it showed defied every principle of physics and aviation engineering. The turbine blades, which were completely stationary according to both visual confirmation and the engine's monitoring systems, appeared to be rotating slowly on the screen, not from mechanical movement, but from something causing distortion within the metal itself. And embedded within that distortion, visible for just 3 frames of recorded footage before the system shorted out, was what Mercer described as a face. Not human, not anything that should exist in our world. This is where the official maintenance report ends. What follows comes from confidential interviews, security footage that was later deleted from airport servers, and testimony from 3 maintenance workers who subsequently resigned from the airline. Phillips convinced Mercer to take a break. The senior engineer, still visibly shaken, agreed to step outside for some air. They left the borescope equipment beside the engine and walked toward the hangar exit. Security footage shows them talking animatedly, with Mercer repeatedly glancing back at the aircraft. At precisely 2:17 a.m., every light in the maintenance hangar flickered simultaneously. For 12 seconds, the entire facility went dark. Emergency generators should have activated immediately. They didn't. When the lights returned, Phillips and Mercer were already running back toward the Boeing 787. The borescope camera was now inside the engine inlet, although neither man had left it there. More disturbing was what the hangar's security cameras captured during those 12 seconds of darkness. Enhanced footage, analyzed later by forensic video specialists, revealed a subtle anomaly. The engine, a 6-ton piece of machinery securely mounted to the wing, moved. Not the entire assembly, but something inside it shifted independently, creating a ripple effect across the titanium surface. It was breathing, Mercer insisted during his final interview before resigning. The whole engine expanded and contracted like a chest taking a breath. When they reached the aircraft, both men reported an overwhelming smell, like ozone mixed with something organic and rotting. The borescope's digital display was cycling through images autonomously, although the device wasn't designed with such capability. The images showed the interior of the engine from multiple impossible angles, as if the camera had somehow navigated to areas inaccessible through the inspection port. And in each image, the metal components appeared wrong, distorted, almost fluid. In one frame, later recovered from the corrupted memory card, a turbine blade reflected light in such a way that it formed what unmistakably resembled an eye that appeared to be looking directly at the camera. Phillips attempted to remove the borescope. As his hand touched the cable, he experienced what he described as an electric shock, but cold, like being plunged into ice water. He was thrown backward with such force that he fractured 2 ribs against an equipment cart. The hangar's automated fire suppression system activated without warning. Sprinklers released a deluge of water despite no heat or smoke being detected. Through the artificial rain, Mercer made a final attempt to retrieve the equipment. What he saw when he approached the engine has never been fully disclosed. The security footage shows him reaching toward the inlet, then suddenly recoiling with such horror that he collapsed onto the concrete floor. He remained there, unmoving, until emergency personnel arrived 23 minutes later. 3 facts about the aftermath are undisputed. First, James Mercer never spoke another word. He was admitted to Ridgeview Psychiatric Hospital, where he remains today under 24-hour observation. Second, the borescope was never recovered, although the engine inspection port was found securely closed during subsequent examinations. Third, Flight 2177 was quietly removed from service, disassembled, and its components distributed to different recycling facilities across 3 states. But there's a fourth fact, one that the airline has desperately attempted to suppress. Before the aircraft was disassembled, a final inspection was conducted by a team from the National Transportation Safety Board. Standard procedure. During their examination, they discovered something inside the high-pressure compressor that defied explanation. Embedded within the titanium alloy of the 6th-stage compressor blade, not attached to it, but physically integrated into the metal itself, was an organic material. Initial analysis suggested human tissue. Further laboratory testing revealed something else entirely. The cellular structure of the material resembled nothing in any known biological taxonomy. Its DNA, if it could even be called that, contained sequences that didn't correspond to any terrestrial organism, and it was still metabolically active despite the extreme temperatures and pressure it had endured. It was alive. More disturbing still were the microscopic structures found throughout this material, channels and cavities that resembled a primitive auditory system, a system designed to produce sound. Whatever was in that engine, a senior NTSB investigator wrote in a report that was immediately classified, it could hear us, and it wanted us to hear it. The Boeing 787 that housed Flight 2177's engines had been in service for just under 4 years. During that time, it had completed 788 flights, carrying approximately 194,000 passengers. Each of those passengers had sat mere feet away from the engines. Many had probably pressed their faces against the windows, watching the massive turbines spin during takeoff and landing, listening, without realizing what might have been listening back. The most chilling aspect of this case emerged 6 months later, when an anonymous source within the airline's maintenance division leaked an internal memo. The document revealed that unusual acoustic anomalies had been reported on 17 different aircraft of the same model, all manufactured within 3 months of each other at the same facility. In each case, the reports were filed by passengers who complained of whispers coming from outside the cabin during flight. In each case, these complaints were dismissed as the normal result of air passing over the fuselage or the standard operational sounds of the aircraft. In each case, the passengers who reported these sounds were seated in rows 21 through 24, the rows closest to the engines. What happened to James Mercer that night in the hangar has never been fully explained. The airline attributes his breakdown to exhaustion and workplace stress. The FAA's official report cites equipment malfunction leading to audio feedback and subsequent psychological distress. But neither explanation accounts for what 3 separate laboratory analyses confirmed about the material found embedded in the engine components. It wasn't from our world. Dr. Eleanor Klein, a metallurgist who participated in the investigation, offered perhaps the most disturbing theory. Metal remembers, she explained in a lecture that was quickly removed from university archives. Every stress, every force applied to it changes its molecular structure in subtle ways. It records its own history. What if, she continued, something found a way to access that history, to inhabit it? Every engine carries the echo of its own manufacturing, the stresses of flight, the extreme temperatures of operation. That's a lot of trauma for metal to remember. What if something was drawn to that trauma? Something that feeds on it, amplifies it, and eventually reproduces within it. Dr. Klein resigned from her position 2 weeks after that lecture. Her current whereabouts are unknown. Flight 2177's engines were dismantled, their components scattered across different disposal facilities. But the aircraft they once powered was one of hundreds of identical models currently in service around the world, each containing engines made from the same titanium alloys, manufactured using the same processes, subjected to the same stresses, each carrying hundreds of passengers every day, each spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute, creating the perfect white noise to mask other sounds that might be emanating from deep within their mechanical hearts. Perhaps the most unsettling detail comes from Connor Phillips, who left the aviation industry entirely after that night. Before disappearing from public record, he made a single post to an aviation forum that was deleted within hours. It wasn't just screaming, he wrote, it was words. The same words, over and over. And now I can't stop hearing them, even when I'm nowhere near an aircraft. They said, "We're in all of them." Since the incident at Hartsfield International, 27 maintenance engineers across 12 different airlines have requested transfers away from engine inspection duties. 9 have resigned entirely. 4 have been admitted to psychiatric care. None will discuss their reasons on record. The official stance from aircraft manufacturers, airlines, and aviation authorities remains unanimous. Jet engines are mechanical systems incapable of producing unexplained phenomena. Any unusual experiences reported by maintenance personnel are attributed to fatigue, stress, or equipment malfunction. Yet, internal documents show that borescope inspection protocols have been quietly modified across the industry. Technicians are now advised to conduct engine inspections in teams of at least 2. Audio monitoring during borescope examinations has become optional rather than mandatory. And perhaps most telling, overnight inspections in isolated hangars are now discouraged. The question remains, what did James Mercer really discover inside that engine? Was it merely the psychological break of an overworked mind, or something that challenges our understanding of reality itself? Consider this. Every day, approximately 100,000 commercial flights take off worldwide. Each aircraft contains multiple engines. Each engine contains thousands of individual components, all spinning, heating, cooling, expanding, and contracting under enormous stress, creating the perfect environment for something to hide. Next time you're on a flight, pay attention when the engines change pitch during descent. Listen carefully to what might be hidden beneath the familiar roar of turbines. Watch how the light plays across the spinning blades visible from your window, and ask yourself, is that merely metal and fire powering your journey through the sky? Or is something else looking back at you from within those precisely engineered components? Something that screams. In the 2 years since the incident at Hartsfield International, 8 commercial aircraft have been quietly removed from service due to non-specific mechanical anomalies. All 8 were the same model as Flight 2177. All 8 had passed every standard safety inspection. The only commonality: maintenance crews reported unusual audio phenomena during routine examinations, phenomena that were never officially acknowledged or explained. The airlines involved cited metal fatigue and routine fleet updates as reasons for the retirements, both common practices in commercial aviation. But industry insiders noted these aircraft were retired years before their expected service life. "We don't retire $15 million engines because they make strange noises," an anonymous executive told us, "unless those noises indicate something we don't understand, something we can't fix." Former FAA Inspector Gerald Houghton, who participated in the investigation of 3 such cases before his sudden retirement, offered a cryptic assessment. "Aviation runs on certainty. Every component, every system must behave according to known physical principles. When something challenges those principles, the industry's response isn't to investigate, it's to eliminate the anomaly and pretend it never happened. But covering up one anomaly doesn't help when it's already spread to other aircraft," he added, before abruptly ending our interview. His reference to spreading suggests something troubling about whatever was found in these engines, something contagious, perhaps, something that can transfer from one mechanical system to another. Maintenance records indicate that before their retirement, components from several of these aircraft had been temporarily exchanged with others during routine maintenance, a common practice called parts rotation. This raises the disturbing possibility that whatever caused these anomalies might have been inadvertently transferred to other aircraft still in service. Connor Phillips, before his disappearance, made one final communication, a voicemail to a former colleague that was later transcribed and shared among a small group of aviation technicians. "They nest in the metal," his message stated. "They start in the hottest parts of the engine, where the boundary between states of matter gets blurry. That's how they get in, through the blur. But they don't stay there. I've been tracking maintenance records. Aircraft that shared parts with 2177, even temporarily, started showing the same patterns. Crews report whispers, passengers complain about noises. Then the aircraft gets quietly pulled from service. But here's what keeps me up at night. What happens when they evolve beyond making noise? What happens when they learn to affect the systems they're living inside?" Since Phillips left that message, 3 commercial flights have reported unexplained engine behavior, temporary power fluctuations that didn't correspond to any known mechanical failure. In each case, the aircraft landed safely. In each case, subsequent inspections revealed no physical abnormalities. In each case, the flight data recorder showed engine parameters operating outside their programmed parameters for exactly 3 seconds before returning to normal, as if something briefly took control. James Mercer remains at Ridgeview Psychiatric Hospital, silent and unresponsive. But nurses have reported a disturbing behavior that began approximately 6 months after his admission. During the night, when commercial flights pass over the facility on their approach to the nearby airport, Mercer becomes agitated. He presses himself against the window, following the aircraft with his eyes until they disappear from view. And according to night staff, he mouths the same words over and over, though no sound ever passes his lips. "They're coming out." What did James Mercer see in that engine? What continues to haunt the dreams of those who were present that night? The aviation industry has closed ranks around the incident, but the questions persist. If you're reading this, you might dismiss it as an elaborate fiction, a story designed to prey on the universal fear of being trapped in a metal tube hurling through the sky at 500 miles per hour. But consider this final detail, recorded in the maintenance log for Flight 2177 2 weeks before the incident. During a routine inspection at a different facility, a technician noted an unusual pattern of wear on several first-stage compressor blades. The pattern didn't match any known cause of metal fatigue. When photographed and enhanced, the pattern resembled concentric circles, or, as the technician described them before the observation was redacted from the official record, they look like fingerprints, as if something had been touching the metal from the inside. The next time you board a flight, listen carefully as the engines spin up for takeoff. That familiar mechanical roar might not be as mechanical as you think, and if you hear something else beneath it, something that sounds almost like voices, try to convince yourself it's just your imagination. Try very hard. What would you do if you heard screams coming from an aircraft engine during your inspection? Do you think this was just a mechanical anomaly, or something far more sinister? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more aviation investigations you won't see anywhere else.